experiment with the fear in the room. So the first time that it's open is going to be now, and there can be one person drinking, but you don't know what it is. But I'm going to drink with you. And we make like a živjeli, if you want. So whoever is the bravest, okay. Oh, what? Okay, you three. Okay, but who is the first? He was the first. You were the first. Yes. But I have one more liter. Okay, but I remembered you were the second and you were the third. Don't remember. And for the rest, there's one more liter. So you can choose one of the three. Okay. Cheers. Živjeli. In front of the camera to drink it. Thank you. Okay.
It's not so easy.
Thank you. So this will be the longest durational experiment. Let's see what happens to both of us. And then we have the second person who will drink. I will tell you later when the bar is open again. It will be you will kind of know what it is. And then the third person, you will know what it is. So we see. So as I start, my name is Smirna Kulenović, and one of the methods that I work with as an artist is embodied research. So it's what we are trying to do now. I'm also working with not only theoretical idea of what it means to really digest fear, to digest trauma, to digest landscapes. And for that reason, I also work with a lot of experiments in performative ways or non-performative ways on myself and others. We will talk about ethics also later. So my today's topic is one of the chapters of the PhD that I'm currently doing at the Academy of Fine Arts in Berlin, and the title of my work is Witchcraft for the Wounded Earth. It's a PhD in practice. That means we are using art as a research method. So not just theory, but also our own practice and focusing on embodied research. I would like to start with a poem that I wrote that is also within the publication. That's called Sampler Plate. Sampler Plate. What a combination, she said, like we were a riddle that she couldn't Google. Like war had a flavor and we were the sampler plate. Bosnian, Persian. She said it again, slow, like tasting something forbidden. What is it? My mother sweeping bones of balconies in Sarajevo with radio static still in her ears, or our grandfather praying in calligraphy and hiding poetry in the folds of his chador. The commons is the soup we made when there was no soup. War is not backstory, it's ingredient. It's the way my aunt sets the table with too much food. It's the reason we watch clouds for drones and forests for landmines. We are not exotic, we are evidence. This body is a material archive. This tongue has 2 alphabets and no apology. It's what's left when the world tries to unmake you and you come back with pomegranate salad. Go, count the dead, then have a tea break. Don't forget the rose petals. That's the end. So I would love to start also speaking about a very beautiful species that lives in my country, in Bosnia. It's a blue butterfly. And one of the reasons I started my research in this direction of asking myself how to really archive the trauma and the residues of trauma that live in the land, that live in all the species during and after the wars and conflicts, that not just referring to the ones in the 90s, but constantly happening in our Balkan Peninsula. I would like to begin with a story about the blue butterflies. It's a true story, though it sounds like a myth. It's a story from the land that taught me everything I know about fear and about listening. After the genocide in Bosnia, when we were still counting our missing fathers, brothers, and sisters, no one knew where to dig. The earth was silent, or so it seemed. The perpetrators had been careful. They dug deep. They covered the mass graves with stones and leaves and metal so that even the satellites could not find them. They moved bodies from one grave to another, trying to confuse both the machines and the memory. But the earth remembered. Years passed, and then something strange began to happen. In villages near Srebrenica, Konjic, and Nevesinje, people began to notice swarms of blue butterflies, actually clouds of blue butterflies, shimmering around the villages, around the lands. The butterflies were gathering always in the same places at the exact same time of the year. They were always hovering low, always near the patches of a certain silvery plant that grew in these areas, which is Artemisia, which we call in Bosnian a very well-known plant called pelin. In English, it's wormwood. We also make a very famous drink out of pelin, but that's not what you were drinking. But wormwood, this plant that the butterflies were attracted to, it's a bitter herb. Our grandmothers used it to cleanse the body of poison, to keep the evil spirits from entering the house, and to heal the stomach after eating something difficult. It is said that wormwood grows where the earth has suffered, where something must be remembered. And these butterflies, they feed only on that plant, their host and their only nourishment. The scientists later said that the mass graves had changed the chemistry of the soil and that the decomposition of the bodies has raised the nutrient levels within the soil, which woke up the sleeping seeds of Artemisia, which is also commonly known as a weed. People are trying to extinguish it. So then, when the wormwood blossomed, the blue butterflies came to feed on the wormwood. But we know that that wasn't all. One of the investigators of the mass graves, Amor Mašović, he said of a summer that was so hot that even the sludge of the Drina River cracked open. He said, I quote, "It was as if the earth wanted to release these remains after hiding them for so long." 300 mass graves were found by following the blue butterfly. 300. Each one was a wound that the land refused to keep secret any longer. So in Bosnia, we say that when the dead cannot speak, the plants will. When the plants bloom in silence, even the butterflies carry the message of the dead. So when I go to these sites to gather the plants and to make paper, to make offerings and to listen, I remember these blue butterflies because they were the first archivists, they were the first witnesses, the first ones to show us that the dead were not gone, but they had simply changed their form, and now they live perhaps as this plant. And I remember that the work I do is not mine alone, it is also belonging to them, to the butterflies and to the bitter wormwood and to the women who brewed it as medicine for hundreds of years in the Balkans, and to the earth that still trembles with the memory of mass graves. So tonight, when I speak of the alchemy of fear, we know that we are really speaking about that trembling of all the species together, about how the soil dreams and how everything can bloom into something that shows us the way. So where this work comes from, the location you see here, it's near Srebrenica, very well known internationally, but it's one of the locations that were found later in Čančari. Also thanks to one of the helpers was this blue butterfly. To understand better like what I'm doing and why I'm putting this aspect of the memory into my research, also I want to explain that I was born during the siege of Sarajevo, so the childhood playgrounds for me were mostly minefields or mass graves, and the first memories I have of positive images, because the city Sarajevo, as you know probably, was completely destroyed. We used to go have picnic in the nature, and oftentimes we would have picnics near landmine fields, and I did not understand that that was weird as a child. And only later this feeling of that ghosts that live within the nature that I could not really explain to myself as a child. That feeling of those ghosts present kept haunting me, and I started wanting to know more through my artistic research. And so I start to pose this question: what does it really mean not to run away from fear? Because we are taught that in the Balkan, especially in Bosnia, we are taught that if we are young artists, we need to forget the war and, start doing something else and focus on different topics. And I ask myself, what does it really mean to digest the fear and to digest toxicity? What is even toxicity? So what if toxicity is also a teacher? And what if the poisons of our histories, which are chemical, emotional, and political, are asking for digestion? And in the Balkan post-war landscapes, toxicity is obviously everywhere: in the contaminated rivers, in the iron of the bullet soil, in the plants that learn how to grow on top of mass graves, plants that medicine once feared and that refused domestication. So modern botany calls them weeds or poisonous species, but in traditional knowledge, they are threshold plants. They are messengers between what kills and what heals, asking us to reimagine our relationship with what we call toxic. As Stacy Alaimo reminds us in the bodily natures, our bodies are transcorporeal, porous, entangled with pollutants, soils, and atmospheres. There is no outside to toxicity because it circulates through us. And Astrida Neymanis explains this in The Bodies of Water, writing that to be a body is to be a leaky vessel in a leaking world. We are already made of what we fear to touch. So I ask, what would it mean to digest toxicity rather than deny it, and to metabolize fear into knowledge? In my work, digestion becomes an ecosomatic method and a way of embodying the wounds of the land through a slow and chemical sensual transformation. So in this moment, I would like to open the bar for the second time.
Second person?
Yes.
I'm not afraid.
Bosnian. It's not Pelin, but
Which
it's
one?
okay.
Yeah.
What you want?
Whichever. I use less.
Less.
Save something else.
Okay.
Živjeli.
Živjeli.
Hvala.
It's not so easy.
It's like vitamin D. You know the drop.
It's
It's really. I never drink this. It's not really the Boston way, but it's interesting.
it's a yes.
Now I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's the same like before. I'm not
Okay.
changing.
You like it. I think I know what it is.
Okay. Let's see. We can bet maybe after the. So, as we said, even the plants that we call poisonous are reminding us of this paradox, which Donna Haraway calls staying with the trouble. We are very, very used to that in the Balkans, I would say, remaining with complexity rather than seeking simple ways. And the wormwood, for instance, is healing the stomach when taken in trace amounts, but it burns our stomach when consumed without respect. And in this way, fear and healing are sharing exactly the same root system. And in ecosomatic practice, as Leigh Foster writes, the body is not an instrument of knowledge, but its very sight. To digest is to think through matter, and to let toxicity pass through the gut of awareness until it transforms. So I no longer ask how to cleanse or heal the land, but how to listen to what is poisonous and what it is trying to teach us. How can we learn from what refuses to be tamed, such as weeds, as this one? In this particular photo, I'm showing you the site of my research that is also related to the next artwork where I question this topic, which is called Silence of the Land. This site is one of the unexcavated mass graves, also near Srebrenica, near Čančari. There is endless places. And I want to also start with a personal story, because when I was a child growing up in Bosnia, I basically my parents did not understand that it's quite difficult to bring children to mass grave sites, as many parents did not understand after the war. But we were looking for the body of my uncle. So one of my first memories of going to nature was standing on the edges of open holes where you had hundreds of dead bodies. One of the first things I remembered from those holes was the smell and the wild flowers. And I would often distract myself from the immensity of that fear and pain by picking up wild flowers from those sites. We never found the body of my uncle. And all my life, I've been trying to find a way to commemorate him and to kind of trace his body. So I started working with the plants that grow on the mass grave sites, and in especially those that are not excavated, because in Bosnia still a lot of places we know that the bodies are there, but they're too afraid, the politicians are often too afraid to start digging because it would get more people in trouble. So we try to keep things as they are, so we can say that only the plants are actually remembering and archiving those bodies. So I start my process by going to these sites that are not yet excavated, and I collect plants that grow there, not only toxic or healing plants, but all plants that have fibers that I can later turn into paper. And that is the work that I've been creating in the past 2 years, which is called Silence of the Land. And it's a series of handmade papers done with plants that grow on all the unexcavated mass grave sites. So it's a very long process. It's really a meditative, performative process in itself to bring the plants from the location, to post-process them in a way, to ferment them for many hours, and also to, I use these traditional tools, which are usually done with rocks. You create a paste out of them, such as the one that you can see here. It takes weeks and weeks to create this paste that is ready to be mixed with water. And then when you mix it with water, it can create a plant pulp out of which you can make paper. So as you see on the left, it's a sort of an alchemy, an alchemical process to arrive from this memory into the sheet of paper that you can still see. It's actually shown as a part of this program at the moment in Improper Walls Gallery in Vienna. And I'm making at the moment a book as well, with where I mapped all the different locations where the unexcavated mass graves are, with different types of paper that remember. And this is just one of the examples that is shown right now. Another one also in Rome, in Matatoio, this month as well. Working with this paper has been, in a way, very therapeutic for me personally. Besides this very material-based research, it's a way to really not only digest, but engage with the materiality of someone who is dead. And what does that mean? The land thinks, it metabolizes violence, but it does not forget. In Silence of the Land, paper becomes skin. The fibers of this paper are carrying sorrow and what Donna Haraway calls staying with the trouble. Once again, staying and not fleeing, working with the remnants, with the uneasy residues, with what refuses closure. So moving from paper, I also work with the materiality of clay. This is clay found, Bosnia is very rich with clay. This is clay also found nearby Srebrenica. Srebrenica is also known as a site where water contains a very healing iron metal, and a lot of healing minerals exist in the soil there. So there is a lot of also rich clay sites, and I started collecting them as well, asking what this clay can turn into and how I can work with this as a material. So in this moment also, what you see here is clay from the site. This site is found around 300 meters away from one of the mass graves. And it's actually kaolin, I think in English, the type of clay that nowadays people use to heal their digestive systems. So it's like a very famous thing. You can buy it in the pharmacy, basically. It's called Heilerde in German. So finally, we have this as well, quite close to the mass grave sites. And I've been experimenting with this clay in multiple forms, from making performances and rituals where we try to digest this history by taking this clay that really does calm down your stomach if you ate something bad. You can test it on yourself. I've been collecting it for quite a few years, also testing now and trying to make different objects with it, such as this one, such as objects that I use for tea ceremonies where we work with plants and also soils, trying to remember what it means to drink from such a pot. Also objects such as bowls through which we make bread, because also cooking is one of the methods of research that has been passed on to us in the Balkans for many, many generations, actually. So through multiple methods, and one of them, as you can see, is this one here. So for me, it was an interesting experiment of always who wants to drink something before they know what it is, and then after you know, do you actually want to drink it more or less? I can tell you I've been drinking it for 2 years, nothing happened so far. But I have a good digestive system. So now the bar is open one more time. If you still stay with your decision.
Okay. First, thanks. And I really want to say sorry for that. Thanks.
So I will continue with a poem also that is, you can find it in the text. It's called Fire Safety Regulations. I taught myself to burn less for you to be safe enough. I will not bow to your fire alarms in your disinfected halls. I am fire. I'm a rock. I am rage. I am lava. You want my words softened, my heat cooled, my body stilled, my roots untangled, my tongue split from my people. But you can't get rid of me. I do not let you steal my forest, my soil, my mother tongue. You have already paved over enough of what is sacred. In Europe, they want to teach me how to sit at their tables, how to fold myself neatly into shapes that make you comfortable. But we do not fold, we do not fit. We burn, we resist, we persist. And I remember our lands, our trees, our seas, our roots, crazy, wild, untamed. Together, we did not burn. We are on fire. And now another story about a plant called smreka. It's juniper in English. There's a tradition from Montenegro and southern Serbia of a song about this plant that is usually sung around New Year. And the text of this song says, Smreko, smreko, zimzelena, čuvaj kuću od mrtvoga sjena. Dimi gori, miris širi, dušu vodi, strah umiri. Which means, juniper, juniper, evergreen, guard the house from the shadow of the dead. Smoke, burn, spread your scent, guide the soul, and calm the fear. In the Balkans, every beginning and an ending smells like juniper. Smreka, we call it, a name that already sounds like smoke. Long before the churches or laboratories, women burned juniper wood when fear entered the house. When plague came, or war, or death, they didn't call the priest, they called the smoke. They opened every window and every door and let the blue-gray breath of juniper pass through the rooms, carrying away what should no longer stay. It was a boundary plant between the living and the dead, between what is seen and what is unseen. So when a person died, the smoke of juniper was waved around their body to clear the way for the soul to travel. When a child was born, the same smoke was used to welcome them into the world. There's an old folk belief written in the archives of witchcraft in southern Serbia that if you plant a juniper by your doorstep, any spirit who comes to your house must stop and count all the tiny leaves before she can enter. The counting of these tiny leaves takes so long that the spirit gives up and your house remains safe. The scholars often call it superstition, but I call it the politics of attention. It's the idea that before you cross into someone's home, someone's memory and someone's trauma, you must stop to count, you must take time, you must notice every leaf, and you must ask permission to enter. This is what I try to do in my work, to count every leaf of history before touching it, and to move only when it moves with me. From the perspective of ecosomatics, this is an ethics of attunement. Scholars like Erin Manning and Lisa Nelson speak of somatic attention, how perception itself can become a gesture of care. Juniper, this plant, teaches us the same lesson through the scent and smoke, how to move slowly enough for the invisible to show itself. Because this plant doesn't shout, it simply exhales, and it fills the space between other things. It teaches us about transcorporality, the way that the breath and the smoke and matter move through the bodies, changing their chemistry, their memory, and their relation. I would have loved to also burn this, but it's impossible in this particular situation. In the way, Juniper is also feminist. It refuses the hierarchy between human and non-human, between subject and object. Its smoke equalizes, it enters lungs and walls alike, and it transforms everything it touches into relation. And I want to end with the prototypes that I'm currently making for the new work. These are prototypes of kites that we will fly in this summer, working with a colleague that is a very great expert on kites, Anna. We are trying to imagine a kite, a design of a kite that will be flown, made out of the papers that we made out of the plants that grow on the mass graves. And this summer we are planning to make a performance in Bosnia together with the people who live around the locations, and to transform those plants into the paper and then put them back up into the sky to again remind ourselves of those blue butterflies also that were teaching us to find the way and to open the path, to see into the history and beyond the fear, and also to allow this in a way to have a body and allow this body to fly. So yes, that will be my presentation for today. Thank you so much.
One question if you want now, or we can just go. Yes, sure. Microphone.
Hi, Smirna. So thank you so much for this presentation. This was, at least for me, I also come from Bosnia, so moving, beautiful work, and so profound. And I find that it touches on this theme of the ways of knowing of those who have been through war. And as the Bosnian scholar Saida Hodžić says, that we need to create spaces for those post-crisis epistemologies to remake the world, to disrupt the world and remake it anew. And I find that's exactly what you're doing. But I wonder, because of the way that Bosnia is today and the way that Europe is today, to what extent do you feel heard when you talk about these things there and here? What are your experiences in contact with people in these different spaces where you get to speak? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the observation and for the question. It's difficult to speak in Bosnia very often about these topics. It's very difficult to speak in the Balkans. People are we are collectively struggling with PTSD in a very large and also undiagnosed way. So it's not easy to speak about trauma without triggering many people at the same time, which is why I also chose to work with plants. I also chose to work with species that are not human. And from that perspective, I can say it's so much easier to speak about something when you don't speak with human language. I've done my first 5 years of artistic practice with trying to talk about these topics in different ways, and it didn't really work, ended up getting arrested. So I was like, okay, let's try plants. So it worked. Actually, one of the works I didn't show, we did 300 meters of war trenches that are around Sarajevo. I did a collective ritual with 100 women where we planted 1,000 calendula plants inside, and it's been now for 5 years like a community garden in a way, and these plants are also digesting the history. And what is interesting about that is that nobody came there to destroy the monument because they didn't understand it's a monument. And usually in Bosnia, all kinds of rock-based sculptures, they're getting demolished all the time if they have something to do with the war. So yeah, I think we need to give a little bit more space for the non-human. And in Europe, it's also easy, final remark, in Europe, it's easier to talk about this because at the moment it's very trendy to be a third world country female artist who is working with war. And maybe 3 years ago it wasn't. So I'm also, like now it's very popular to talk about it and there's so many curators interested in it. But 2 years ago, people were telling me, why are you doing this? You know, just do something else, you know, war is over. So that's my final answer. Thank you.
Just before we go, what was in the, with the...
I thought you understood. It was the clay from near Srebrenica, from one of the unexcavated mass grave sites, near 300 meters away, so not directly, but